Yo, what's going on, GenXers? Welcome to my YouTube channel. See me in my 50s. Thank you for joining me today for this brief video. Now, if you look at the title, it discusses GenXers. We were used to going outside. What I see a lot now when it comes to the kids, and kids were totally different. We were different back in the day. We were a different breed, GenXers. All right, I'm gonna get into that real quick. We were totally different compared to the kids this day and age, because back in the day, we were told to go outside by our parents, by our grandparents, get out the house, go outside. If we couldn't find nowhere to play and stay out of trouble, they didn't have a problem giving us chores. We would go outside and cut the grass. A lot of us had gardens back in the day. Our parents had gardens. So we would go work in the garden during the spring and summer months. And they did not have no problem sending us over to a neighbor house to help them do some yard work, as long as we were outside. Now, this day and age, these kids and stuff, and not to badmouth the kids, a lot of things is just, things are just different this day and age. Technology have came in. A lot of kids are in the house because a lot of them, have a lot of gaming systems. They play a lot of video games. There's nothing wrong with those things. It's just that now, after a while, I could tell the big difference, and I'm gonna get into that in a minute. One place I can see a difference when it comes to us being outside back in the day and the kids being in the house this day and age. One of the things that back in the day I noticed about video games, I'm gonna touch on that real quick. Maybe it was only like in our school, only a very small amount of children had video games. Back in the day, they had Atari, ColecoVision, was that Intellivision, gaming systems like that. They had Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Mario Brothers. Some of these kids this day and age probably never even heard of them games. And they may have newer versions of them. But a lot of the kids in the neighborhood, we didn't have those games. A lot of the kids, they grew up, I grew up in Oakland, California, so my parents owned their home, and we had a big backyard, but we were able to go outside in the front till our neighborhood started getting kind of, drug ridden. The crack epidemic came in, but we had a big backyard too, where we was back there, me and my brothers, sometime playing baseball. Well, we outside doing a lot of yard work too. We had two dogs, two big old German Shepherds. So we didn't mind being outside back in the day. We had a lot of kids in the neighborhood and things. This day and age, I just don't see a lot of kids outside. We used to play street football. The boys would play street football. I stopped seeing that probably about 1990. Probably about the 1990s, early 1991, 92. Street football went away. We used to play strikeout, baseball, stuff like that. So we were active. We were very active outside all the time. I remember the games hide and go seek, freeze tag, and then the girls would play. The girls would play double dutch. Y'all remember them games, man, back in the day. And that was city kids. Now, I grew up in the city, but I'm sure the kids that grew up in the country back in the day, the Gen Xers, they probably did other things, like they probably hunt a lot more. I don't know, I'm not sure what a lot of kids that grew up in the country actually did. But I know as us city kids, we were outside a whole lot, playing in the streets, running the streets, and we had to stay out of trouble too. And the streets was so easy to get in some type of trouble, but we had to stay out of trouble. We still got in trouble, but we kept it to a minimum. As we got older in our teenage years, we started venturing out a little bit more, going up to schools, playing basketball, playing football. We used to play tackle football back in the day with no gear. So, and I'm saying all of that to say this. there's an epidemic of fatty liver disease that's going on in children now. I think a lot of that has a lot to do with, well, not just being lack of physical activities and being physically industrious, but poor diets too. There's a lot of fast food around, processed food. We just wasn't really, the most processed food we ate back in the day was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and bologna sandwiches and hot dogs. They didn't have all of these fast food restaurants everywhere. So us Gen Xers, we were actually, now this is just my opinion, the last generation of street kids, kids that played outside, kids that basically were able to stay in shape due to, the way we ate and, the way we basically stayed physically industrious, running around, sweating, stay outside from the early afternoon till it get dark, having fun. Another thing about Gen Xers back in the day that I noticed about the kids this day and age, a lot of kids this day and age get bullied. Now, we all dealt with some form of bullying, but the bullying that we dealt with back in the day was temporary bullying. And, I'm sure that you Gen Xers can relate to this too. That made one of the reasons why I call it temporary bullying growing up back in the day is because, sooner or later you get bullied for so long, somebody get into a fight. End of discussion. We was brought up, being taught that they could say what they want, but if they touch you, hey, if somebody hit you, hit them back. And you didn't have all these school shootings and everything else back in the day, and people still had weapons, but, these were the only weapons back in the day. And I think a lot of that stems from the bullying that goes on with kids this day and age. A lot of it goes on because back in the day, Gen Xers, we got whoopings. Now, you're going to ask yourself, well, what do whoopings have to do with being bullied at school? Well, I tell you, as kids back in the day, we were used to getting hands put on us by our parents, by grandparents. I remember my old school principal in elementary school walked around with a ruler. His name was Mr. Howard. Oh, and he was mean. But he didn't have no problem hitting them kids with them rulers. Back in the day, you could do that. This day and age, man, and them kids was in check. We were in check. We didn't have the mouth that these kids have on them now. And I think a lot of the bullying that goes on now with kids is because they're not outside enough. They lack physical activity. That's why there's a lot of fatty liver diseases. Kids suffer from obesity. They're not physically active. A lot of them never been into a fist fight. Not to say that violence is good, but fighting back in the day as kids, and growing up, we learned that and we knew how it felt to get hit because our parents hit us. So it was nothing to go to school, and if a kid hit on you, hey, you didn't have no problem hitting them back. That's why I say temporary bullying, because the bullying did not last like it does now, man. These kids are getting bullied on social media. They getting bullied bad from, it's causing mental breakdowns in children. And, that's the whole topic of this video I'm making for the Gen Xers. It's just just reminiscing. I just wanted to come out with this video for the Gen Xers. Do you remember back in the day how we just operated way differently, than the kids this day and age? We were trendsetters. We were way different than a lot of these kids back in the day. I mean, these kids this day and age. We were physically active. So You know, with that being said, Gen Xers out there, don't lose touch with the way you were back in the day. You know, you were physically active. Um, your diet was limited. You didn't eat all that junk food, and you know, we used to eat now laters and lemon heads. Um, if we had soda, it was rare. We had to drink water right out the water fountain outside. We used to drink water out the water fountain. These kids got bottled water. Now, it's true that the water is more, unhealthier now, but, we were more, we were more wild kids, sort of like junkyard dogs or alley cats. We were just wild kids, and we stayed out of trouble a lot more, man. We weren't doing what these other kids are doing this day and age. And no shade on the kids this day and age, but the kids are totally opposite than the way we were because, like I said, our limited diet, um, you know, we were a lot more physically active. We didn't deal with bullies long term because our parents whooped us, so it was nothing to fight a kid our size because we knew how it felt to get hit by people bigger than us, being our parents, grandparents. So we wasn't gonna go to school and deal with that crap. We wasn't gonna go in the streets and deal with that crap from people our size and our age. And we're just a lot different now. It's crazy now how, you know, these kids out here, and maybe that's basically just parenting too, because back in the day, it was okay to whoop your kids. This day and age, they look at that like that's abuse. I don't look at it as abuse. I look at it as training. See, we were trained. I don't call it abuse. Back in the day, it was not called abuse. I call it training, physical training, to be able to defend yourself. We were trained to defend ourselves physically. And even the kids, they get bullied now. And like I said, we got bullied, but after a while, we used to talk about each other mamas. Yeah. Somebody bullying you, bad mouthing you, that's what we did. We started talking about each other mamas. Be like, your mama this, your mama that. Kids can't, and that was deep. Because this day and age, you can't do that. But back in the day, we did that. And I would have to say, us Gen Xers, we're a lot more tougher than these kids this day and age. Our skin is thicker. You got all this cancel culture. You can't say this. You can't tell people the truth. You can't be upfront. You can't be blunt. And it's just caused just a downward spiral in society. And we all know as Gen Xers that we're not used to that. A lot of us are probably, well, I mean, I can speak for myself. I'm having a hard time trying to accept that. Watching how this society is just going downhill from the way people basically just raise their kids now. Hey, people can raise their kids the way they raise them, but at the same time, this is why a lot of these kids may be having problems, from the way they're raised. It's almost like they're babied a lot more, and everything is everything is sort of like right in front of them. They could just touch something, and whatever they want appears. I remember we had to walk to school back in the day through bad neighborhoods growing up, in crack infested neighborhoods. Well, crack dealers was out there. Now, they didn't bother us. They didn't bother us at all. But that's the kind of things that we had to deal with. So we learned a little bit of street savviness out there. And I can't imagine a lot of these kids. I mean, unless you kind of like growing up in that type of environment, but maybe it's still different, because even in, I would call like the hood and everything, the kids are still way different. Because I still, even in the hood, and I don't go around there, I live in the Southeast now. And like I said, I grew up in Oakland, California, but even if I go into some of these little urban areas in the cities, I still don't see kids outside playing. Not all like you think. Not like we did back in the day. And I think that's just a lot of reason why. That's the main reason why, or the main reasons why, you know, the kids are totally different. And that's why I talk about go outside. It's part of holistic self-care, ecotherapy, getting that vitamin D, letting that sun hit you, breathing that fresh air, getting out that house, get away from them video games. You know, maybe some of the younger kids could probably run across this video and take it to heart. No shade on the younger generations out there, but you know, my opinion, when it comes to Gen Xers, we were the trendsetters. Yeah, we were the trendsetters. So if you a Gen Xer, born between, 1965 and 1980, pat yourself on the back. We was raised differently. You know, we didn't take handouts. We had to figure it out. So shout out to the Gen Xers out there. Thank you for joining me. And stay tuned for future videos. Just to see me in my 50s. Have a good day.